Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step through the frozen darkness of the year 1415 toward a medieval castle holding its breath beneath the coldest winter night. What happens when stone walls turn colder than iron? Wells begin to freeze, and every flame becomes a treasure who sleeps warmly, who shivers beside the doors, and who must remain awake while everyone else dreams. Snow whispers across the road, gathering in pale folds against thorn hedges and frozen ruts. Your boots press into the crust with a soft, dry crackle. The air smells of wood smoke, damp wool, and distant animals sheltered behind thick walls. So, before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. And while you are getting comfortable, tell us in the comments where you are listening from, along with your local time. Now, dim the lights and follow the narrow road as it bends toward the castle gate. You walk slowly beneath a sky washed silver by moonlight. The cold catches your cheeks and settles inside your gloves. Ahead, the castle rises from a low ridge, dark except for a few amber windows. Its towers seem almost calm, yet the men guarding them are anything but comfortable. The year is 1415, and winter has tightened its grip across the countryside. Fields lie buried under hard snow, and nearby streams carry plates of ice. Outside these walls, darkness feels broad and exposed. The castle promises safety. Warmth is another matter. As you approach, the outer ditch appears beneath a crust of frost. It is not necessarily filled with water, despite what later paintings often suggest. Many castle ditches remain dry, shaped to slow attackers and make walls harder to reach. Tonight, snow has softened its angles, though hidden stones still wait beneath. Your path crosses a timber bridge toward the gatehouse. Frozen boards creak under each careful step. Somewhere below, loose ice clicks against a post, producing a small hollow sound. Above you, a guard shifts behind the parapet. His outline is bulky with wool and leather. He cools down firmly enough to stop your progress. Visitors are questioned after dark, especially during unsettled times. England and France are at war, and news travels slowly, badly, and often with unnecessary drama. A lantern appears behind an arrow slit. Its flame trembles in the draught. You give your name, your purpose, and the household connection, permitting entry. The guard listens while rubbing one hand against the other. Authority is easier to maintain when your fingers are not numb. The gatehouse is the castle's most carefully defended entrance. It combines doors, chambers, narrow passages, and positions for men above. Heavy timber gates can be strengthened with iron, while a portcullis may stand ready to drop. Historians still argue whether certain openings above gate passages were designed mainly for missiles, pouring water, or communication with the defenders below. Boiling oil, beloved by dramatic stories, would have been costly and impractical. Stones, sand, and unpleasant liquids were more believable choices. Fortunately, nothing is poured on you tonight. The outer door opens with a groan from swollen hinges. Warm air does not greet you. Instead, the passage holds a trapped chill, mixed with smoke and horse scent. Stone walls glisten faintly where breath and dampness have gathered. Your fingertips brush the surface, and the cold feels immediate, almost wet. Inside, two guards stand near a brazier. The charcoal gives a dull red glow, but little comfort beyond arm's reach. Smoke collects beneath the ceiling before slipping through a vent. One man leans closer until another nudges him aside with sleepy irritation. Their clothing is practical rather than splendid. Linen shirts sit beneath woolen tunics, with cloaks fastened tightly at the shoulder. Some guards wear padded garments that offer both warmth and protection. Gloves are valuable, yet finger movement becomes awkward when leather stiffens in freezing air. A quirky detail survives in household accounts from the wider medieval period. Castle officials sometimes purchased old cloth, scraps or worn coverings for reuse around doors, animals, and service spaces. Nothing warm was wasted merely because it had lost its beauty. You pass beneath the raised portcullis. Its iron points hang overhead like dark teeth. Water has frozen along one edge, forming tiny clear beads. A servant has scattered straw over the floor to absorb moisture and reduce slipping. It smells dusty, sour, and faintly sweet. Beyond the gatehouse lies the outer ward. Workshops, stables, storage sheds, kitchens, and lodging chambers create a small enclosed community. Even at night, work continues. A stable boy hurries across the ward carrying a wooden bucket. His shoulders rise against the cold, and his breath streams behind him. Near the stables, horses stamp heavily, shaking harness chains. Their bodies produce precious warmth, although the smell of dung and damp hay challenges romance. Wind sweeps between buildings and presses against your cloak. Snow has been trampled into grey ridges by boots, hooves, and cartwheels to your left. A watchman tests the fastening on the side door. Thick planks resist attack, but gaps around them invite icy drafts. Cloth hangings, straw packing, and wooden screens help reduce the flow. Perfect insulation remains a dream for another age. The castle's stone walls store the day's cold and release it slowly. They provide strength, status, and defense, yet they do not create warmth. Interior timber partitions, plaster, tapestries, shutters, and curtains make rooms more livable without those softer layers. Noble chambers would feel like elegant caves. You notice narrow windows set high in several buildings. Some are glazed, particularly in prestigious rooms, but glazing remains expensive. Other openings may use shutters, horn, or oilcloth. Every choice balances light against warmth. A bell sounds from deeper within the enclosure. Its tone is muted by the snow, spreading through the ward in a slow bronze pulse. The guards glance towards the keep, measuring the hour by routine rather than clocks. Daily life still follows bells, prayers, meals, and darkness. The gate closes behind you. First comes the wooden impact, then the scrape of bars sliding into place. The sound carries reassurance and finality. Outside, the road disappears beneath moonlight and snow. Inside, the castle gathers itself against the night. You move towards the inner buildings while smoke curls low above the roofs somewhere. A kitchen door opens, releasing steam and the smell of onions, broth, and roasted fat. Somewhere else, a dog barks once, then settles. The wind continues along the battlements, searching every crack, yet the household endures. You have crossed the boundary between winter's open darkness and winter under human management. The cold remains powerful, but here it is answered by labour. Fuel, cloth, food, rank, and constant attention. Every warm room depends upon someone carrying wood through the snow. Ahead, the great hall glows behind shuttered windows. Voices drift through the doorway whenever it opens. Supper is ending. Benches are crowded, and servants are still moving. You draw closer, leaving the guarded gate behind as the castle's warmer heart begins to reveal itself. You draw closer to the great hall, where the light behind the shutters trembles like trapped fire. Each time the door opens, warm air escapes into the ward, carrying voices, smoke, and the rich smell of supper. You step across the threshold and feel the night loosen its grip, though only slightly. The hall is warmer than the gatehouse, but nobody would call it comfortable by modern standards. Heat gathers unevenly around the central hearth and the larger wall fireplace. Beyond that precious circle, cold lingers near doors, windows, and stone. Your face warms first, while your boots remain stiff and damp. A servant pushes the door closed behind you. Thick woolen hangings cover parts of the walls, softening the room and slowing drafts. These textiles are not merely decoration, they help make a great stone chamber livable during winter, especially when cold air finds every crack. Above, smoke curls through the rafters, some leaves by a smoke vent or louvre, yet plenty remains indoors. It stings your eyes and gives every beam a darkened surface. The air tastes faintly bitter, mixed with roasted meat, spilled ale, wet cloaks, beeswax, and human breath. The room is crowded. At the high end, the Lord's table stands upon a raised platform. Rank becomes visible through distance, furniture, serving order, and access to warmth. This arrangement follows one of the clearest facts about medieval domestic life. The Great Hall is both dining room and public stage. Meals display authority, reinforce hierarchy, settle business, and remind everyone who belongs where. You pass long trestle tables covered with boards, benches run beside them, and rushes lie scattered across the floor. These help absorb dampness, grease, scraps, and mud. A dog noses beneath a bench, hopeful and patient. Another lies close to the hearth, enjoying a position many servants might envy. Nobody seems surprised. Medieval halls often include dogs, especially hunting animals and smaller companions. They bring noise, warmth, fleas, and excellent confidence. Near the lower tables, men finish thick pottage from wooden bowls. The mixture contains grain, onions, herbs, and perhaps pieces of meat. Bread serves as food, utensil, and sometimes plate. Dense trenchers may catch sauce and grease before being given to servants, animals, or the poor. The meal has followed the rhythms of winter supply. Fresh produce is limited, so the household depends upon grain, dried peas, beans, salted meat, smoked fish, cheese, and stored roots. Wealth expands the menu, but it cannot entirely ignore the season. A platter passes close enough for you to smell pepper and cloves. Imported spices are expensive, associated with status, and used with care. Contrary to a familiar tale, they are not simply employed to disguise rotten meat. Spoiled food remains dangerous, even when covered in very fashionable pepper. One elderly retainer lifts his cup and speaks too loudly. His neighbour answers with a tired smile. Supper encourages conversation, but the hall remains controlled by custom. Cups are shared in some settings, hands are washed before eating, and servants circulate constantly with the food and drink. A brass basin appears before a guest at the upper table. Warm water is poured over the hands, then caught beneath. A cloth follows. Washing before meals reflects courtesy and religious ideas about cleanliness, even though later centuries often imagine medieval people cheerfully avoiding water. You feel the heat from the hearth as you move nearer. Logs crack sharply, sending sparks toward a metal screen. Firewood is essential, and winter demand is immense. Teams must cut, season, transport, stack, and guard it. A castle without reliable fuel becomes a stone refrigerator with excellent defences. A surprisingly quirky household concern appears in surviving records. Officials sometimes tracked candles, firewood, and even kitchen scraps with remarkable seriousness. A missing bundle of fuel might matter more than a missing ornament, especially during severe cold. At one side of the hall, a musician plucks a small harp. The notes are gentle but imperfect, nearly swallowed by talk and clattering cups. You notice that everyone wears layers indoors. Woolen gowns, lined cloaks, caps, hoods, and fur trims remain in place. Clothing provides the most dependable warmth, because fires cannot heat the entire chamber evenly. Even the Lord may sit beneath a canopy that limits drafts and traps some warmth. Scholars continue to debate how consistently large medieval halls remained in daily use during the coldest periods. Some households may have shifted meals into smaller chambers when possible, while ceremonial expectations kept others gathered in the hall. Practice likely varied with wealth, architecture, fuel, and personal preference. Tonight, however, the hall is fully occupied. Servants remove platters while others bring pitchers of ale. Water can be unreliable in taste and cleanliness. Yet people do not drink ale because every drop of water is deadly. Wells, springs, and stored water remain important. Ale simply provides calories, familiarity, and a welcome sense of comfort. At the lower end, a young page struggles with a stack of wooden dishes. One slips, strikes the floor, and spins beneath the table. Several people glance over. The boy freezes, waiting for anger, but a steward merely points and continues speaking. The steward silently expects him to retrieve it. You hear the quiet machinery of service everywhere. Cloths are folded, cups gathered, crumbs brushed, and leftovers assessed. Nothing is casually discarded. Food can feed servants, animals, or those receiving charity at the gate. Grease may be saved, bones reused, and stale bread transformed. A steward walks through the hall with keys hanging from his belt. He supervises stores, servants, and household order. Near the hearth, two women mend a torn woolen sleeve while speaking softly. Their needles flash in the firelight. Textile repair is constant work, because cloth is valuable and winter punishes every hole. A repaired garment may look humble, but warmth rarely cares about elegance. The hall slowly changes as supper ends. Important guests withdraw toward private chambers, taking servants and candles with them. Lower-ranking members remain behind to clear tables, bank fires, and prepare sleeping spaces. Some may eventually sleep here, wrapped in cloaks near the remaining warmth. The benches scrape backward. Trestle boards are lifted and carried aside. Rushes stir beneath many feet, releasing the smell of crushed herbs and old ash. The musician stops playing. Without the melody, the wind outside becomes easier to hear against shutters and roof tiles. You pause near the doorway leading toward the service passages. Behind you, the hearth glows beneath settling logs. Ahead, steam drifts from the kitchens, where supper's ending means another round of labour. The great hall has shown you the castle's public warmth, carefully arranged around status and flame. Yet every cup, platter, log, and candle has arrived through unseen hands. You follow those hands now, moving away from noble conversation and toward the smoke, heat, and relentless work beyond the screens. You pass behind the carved wooden screen at the lower end of the hall. The air changes almost at once. Conversation fades behind you, replaced by chopping, splashing, clattering metal, and the steady roar of several fires. The kitchens occupy a world of their own. Heat presses against your face, thick and immediate. Smoke curls beneath the ceiling, where soot has blackened every beam. The floor feels greasy underfoot, scattered with rushes, ash, onion skins, and damp footprints. Somewhere nearby, fat strikes hot iron and hisses sharply. You smell broth, wood smoke, garlic, wet wool, and roasted meat. Beneath those stronger scents lies something sour from spilled ale and old scraps. It is not a delicate atmosphere. It is practical, crowded, and very alive. A cook stands before a large hearth, turning a spit with practiced movements. Beside him, a younger servant keeps the mechanism moving while blinking through smoke. Some wealthier kitchens use mechanical spit devices powered by weights, dogs, or heat, though human labour remains common. Tonight, the boy provides the machinery. His hands are red from cold water and heat. He works close enough to the flames for his cheeks to shine, yet his back remains chilled by the draught behind him. Medieval kitchens create strange pockets of temperature. One side of your body may roast while the other feels winter breathing through the wall. Large cauldrons hang over separate fires. One contains pottage thickened with oats and vegetables. Another holds bones, herbs, and scraps simmering into broth. A third is being cleaned with sand and rough cloth. Because soap is costly and not always suited to every task, you move carefully between benches covered with knives, bowls, wooden spoons, and slabs of bread. A servant carries a basket of onions from a storage chamber. Another arrives with dried peas measured from a sack. Every ingredient has been counted, guarded, and stretched across the season. Winter food begins months earlier. Grain must be harvested, dried, milled, and stored before rain or vermin ruin it. Meat is salted, smoked, or preserved in fat. Fish may be dried or packed in barrels. Apples, pears, nuts, and root vegetables wait in cool chambers where frost must be kept away. The cold helps preservation, but too much cold creates new problems. Frozen barrels can split, roots can become damaged, water turns stubborn, butter becomes nearly impossible to spread. Which might be the least tragic problem in the castle, though breakfast would disagree. A senior cook tastes the pottage with a wooden spoon. He frowns, adds salt, and tastes again. Salt is essential for both flavour and preservation, but it is carefully managed. Supplies depend upon trade, local production, and the household's wealth. One well-established fact about medieval castle life is the importance of fasting rules. The church calendar shapes what people eat on many days. Meat from land animals may be avoided during fasts, while fish becomes especially valuable. Wealthy households therefore maintain impressive supplies of salted herring, dried cod, eels, and other permitted foods. The definition of fish can become wonderfully flexible. Beavers, barnacle geese, and certain water animals occasionally appear in strange theological discussions about what counts as suitable fasting food. Practice varies by place and period, and not every odd claim becomes ordinary dinner. Still, medieval classification can be surprisingly creative when appetite meets religious obligation. Near the wall, a kitchen clerk checks marks on a wax tablet. He records quantities sent from storage and portions delivered to the hall. Household management depends upon writing, memory, and supervision. Missing food can mean theft, waste, or poor planning. All three are dangerous during winter. Historians remain uncertain about how precisely kitchen accounts reflect what ordinary workers actually consumed. Written records often focus on elite households, official purchases, and formal meals, leftovers, informal exchanges, garden produce, and small acts of generosity may leave little evidence. The surviving numbers are useful but incomplete. A scullion crouches beside a tub, scrubbing dishes in water already clouded with grease. His sleeves are rolled above the elbows. Steamer rises from one bucket, while another has begun forming a thin skin of ice near the doorway. He moves between both worlds, heat and cold, without complaint that anyone notices. Water must be carried from a well, cistern, or nearby source. It is heavy even in good weather. Tonight, frozen surfaces and slippery paths make every journey slower. Kitchen servants may spend much of their strength simply moving water, fuel, and waste. A woman enters with an armful of split wood. Snow clings to her shoulders before melting into dark patches. She drops the logs beside the hearth and holds her hands toward the flames. The relief on her face lasts only a moment. Then someone calls for more. Firewood is consumed constantly. Green wood smokes badly and burns poorly, while seasoned wood must be stored under cover. Different woods offer different heat and burning qualities. Oak burns steadily, though smaller branches and brush help start fires. Peat may also be used in some regions, producing a distinctive earthy smoke. Coal is known in medieval Europe, but its use varies by location and purpose. Most castle kitchens depend heavily upon timber, making nearby woodland economically essential. You hear a sudden crash. A copper pot has slipped from a hook and struck the floor. Everyone looks toward it, then returns to work once they see nothing has spilled. The cook mutters at the servant responsible. His irritation is quiet but efficient. Copper cookware conducts heat well, yet it is expensive. Pots may be repaired repeatedly, patched by skilled metalworkers and carefully listed among household possessions. A damaged vessel is not casually replaced. At another bench, pastry cooks shape dough around a savoury filling. Thick pastry cases sometimes function more like cooking containers than food. They protect fillings from direct heat and hold juices during baking. Some crusts are eaten, while others may be considered too hard or coarse for elite diners. A boy steals a small piece of dough. He thinks nobody sees him. An older woman notices, raises one eyebrow, and continues chopping herbs. Perhaps she remembers being hungry. Perhaps she plans to scold him later. The kitchen keeps its own quiet laws. Bundles of sage, parsley, thyme, and other herbs hang from rafters. Their scent softens the smoke when disturbed. Herbs add flavour and are also valued for supposed medicinal qualities. Medieval people do not separate food and medicine as neatly as later societies often do. Warm spiced drinks may be offered to someone chilled or unwell. Broth restores strength. Certain herbs are believed to balance bodily humours. Whether every remedy works is another question, though warmth and hydration still provide genuine comfort. You pass a table where cooked meat is being divided. The finest portions have already gone to the high table. Other cuts remain for retainers, servants, and later meals. Bones are saved for stock. Drippings are collected. Even ashes can have uses in cleaning and household work. Waste is expensive. Outside the kitchen door, buckets wait for scraps. Some will feed pigs or dogs. Other refuse must be carried away before smells. Rats or disease become worse. Winter slows decay, but it does not make filth disappear. The kitchen begins settling after the hall supper, yet the fires cannot simply be abandoned. Coals must be managed, equipment cleaned, stores secured, and morning work prepared. Bread dough may need attention before dawn. Someone will remain awake longer than the nobles ever realize. You stand near the passage leading toward the servants' quarters. Behind you, cauldrons simmer and knives continue their soft rhythm against wood. Ahead, exhausted workers move through darker corridors carrying blankets, fuel, and basins. The warmth of the hall depended upon this room. The comfort of private chambers depends upon many more hands still moving through the castle. You follow them away from the fires, where the air grows colder with every step. You leave the kitchen by a narrow passage where the heat fades almost immediately. The walls press close on either side, and the floor slopes beneath your feet. Smoke follows you for several steps, then thins into the colder smell of stone, damp straw, and old wool. A servant passes carrying folded blankets against her chest. Another follows with a basket of firewood balanced against one hip. Neither speaks. Their work continues through gestures, habit, and the quiet understanding that every room still needs something. The castle is settling for the night, but the servants are not. You follow them into a service corridor running behind the principal chambers. Here, the light is weaker and the air sharper. Small oil lamps throw uneven circles across plastered walls. Their flames bend whenever a door opens, revealing how freely the winter air moves through the building. A young maid stops beside a chamber door and listens before entering. She carries a basin of warm water, a cloth, and a small jug. Inside, a guest is preparing for bed. The maid must place everything carefully, stir the fire, straighten the bedding, and remove whatever is no longer wanted. Her steps remain soft. Domestic service in a noble household follows a strict hierarchy. Senior officers supervise stores, meals, accounts, horses, and chambers. Beneath them work cooks, grooms, laundresses, pages, porters, scullions, and many others. Rank exists even among those who serve. A trusted chamber servant enjoys greater access and better conditions than a kitchen boy. A steward may carry keys and issue orders. while a junior worker spends hours hauling water. Everyone belongs to the household, yet comfort is distributed with remarkable precision. You watch a footman kneel beside a brazier in a small room. He uses iron tongs to rearrange charcoal, encouraging a steadier glow. The work looks simple, but enclosed braziers can fill chambers with dangerous fumes when ventilation is poor. Medieval people understand that smoke harms the air, though their explanations differ from modern knowledge. They may blame foul vapours, bad smells, or corrupted atmosphere. Practical experience still teaches them to open vents, manage fires, and avoid sleeping too close to heavy smoke. The room's owner will never see this preparation. By the time the noble guest enters, the bed curtains will be drawn, the sheets warmed, and the chamber made orderly. The servant responsible may then return to a colder sleeping place with less fuel and thinner bedding. Comfort travels upward, labour travels everywhere. You continue along the corridor until a door opens beside you. Two women emerge carrying a wooden chest between them. It contains fresh linen, spare caps, and carefully folded cloths. Linen is valuable because it requires extensive labour to grow. Process, spin, weave, bleach, and sew. Clean fabric matters for warmth, status, and personal care. Shirts and shifts form a washable layer beneath heavier wool garments. Bedding also requires attention, especially when dampness settles into rooms and causes blankets to smell musty. One less familiar household practice involves warming beds with heated stones, bricks, or metal warming pans. Such methods can provide comfort, but they also carry risks. A coal left too hot may scorch cloth, while a careless spark can turn luxury into panic. Tonight, a servant wraps warmed stones in thick fabric before placing them beneath a coverlet. He tests each bundle with his palm, then removes one that feels too hot. His caution is learned rather than written. You pass a stairwell where wind spirals downward from an upper landing. The draught carries the smell of snow and soot. A boy climbs toward you with a bucket in each hand. Water sloshes over the rims and freezes in tiny beads along the wood. He pauses halfway. The buckets pull his arms downward, and his breathing grows louder. He cannot rest long because someone upstairs is waiting. Water is needed for drinking, washing, cooking, animals, cleaning, and extinguishing fires. Every drop must be drawn, carried, stored, and guarded from freezing. Castle architecture rarely makes this easy. Wells may be deep, cisterns may collect rainwater, and some fortifications have water supplies placed within protected courtyards. Yet even secure access does not reduce the weight. The boy lifts the buckets again. You follow him to the upper passage, where a senior servant checks chamber doors. She carries a ring of keys and a small candle protected by her hand. Her expression is calm, though she seems aware of everything at once. She notices a shutter not properly fastened and calls for assistance. Two servants press it closed while another wedges cloth into the gap. Frost has already formed along the inner frame. Their fingers work quickly because the room beyond belongs to someone important. Researchers do not agree on how many servants slept within the chambers they attended. Arrangements probably varied according to household size, security, rank, and available space. Some attendants rested nearby, while others returned to communal rooms or service quarters. The records rarely describe every sleeping body. You enter a smaller chamber where bedding is being prepared for retainers. Straw mattresses lie upon low frames or directly on raised platforms. Wool blankets are layered across them. Several people may share a room, and sometimes a bed, because privacy is less important than warmth. Shared sleeping does not necessarily imply intimacy. It can be practical, ordinary, and expected. Travellers share beds at inns. Servants sleep beside colleagues. Children rest near attendants. Body heat becomes another household resource. A man shakes out a blanket beside you. Dust rises into the lamplight, carrying the smell of lanolin and suet. He checks the edges for damp patches. then folds the driest section toward the top. Nothing is perfectly clean, everything is useful. The servants themselves wear layers that have been repaired many times. Sleeves show patches of slightly different wool. Shoes are stuffed with dry grass or scraps of cloth. Hoods are pulled close around ears, and belts secure garments against drafts. A servant's clothing may be supplied partly through wages, household allowances, gifts or cast-off garments from superiors. Fine cloth can descend through several owners before ending as lining, wrapping, or cleaning material. One curious detail from medieval household life is the importance of livery, clothing issued by a lord to retainers and servants. It identifies belonging as much as it provides warmth. Colour, cloth quality, and frequency of issue can signal position within the household. Tonight. However, nobody admires the colour. The practical question is whether the fabric stops the wind. You descend toward a lower chamber near the hall, where several servants prepare their own sleeping area. Benches have been pushed aside, straw pallets spread, and cloaks rolled into makeshift pillows. A small fire glows beneath a watchful eye. They will sleep lightly. Someone must rise if the fire fades too quickly. Someone may be called to attend a sick guest, calm a frightened child, or help a guard at the gate. A castle household never becomes completely still. Near the doorway, a maid empties a basin into a covered bucket. Another servant gathers chamber pots from private rooms. The task is unpleasant, and the cold does not improve it. Waste must be carried through passages without spilling, then emptied into a designated place. The smell briefly overpowers the smoke. No one laughs. The work is too ordinary. A porter arrives with the news that snow is thickening outside. The servants glance toward the shuttered windows, thinking of morning paths, frozen wells, and extra fuel. Their concern is practical rather than dramatic. Winter always creates more work for those whose labour keeps others comfortable. You look back toward the corridor leading to the noble chambers. Behind those doors, fires glow brighter and bedding feels softer. Yet the warmth is not produced by stone rank or good fortune alone. It is carried upstairs in baskets. It arrives in buckets, folded cloth, swept floors, warmed sheets, and carefully banked coals. It depends upon hands that remain cracked, cold, and busy long after supper ends. A final servant passes you carrying a bundle of fresh rushes. You follow him toward the stair that climbs to the sleeping chambers, where curtains, mattresses, and shared warmth await. Behind you, the service corridors continue murmuring through the night. You climb the stair toward the sleeping chambers, leaving the servants' murmurs below. The steps are narrow, worn smooth at their centres, and colder than the passage behind you. Your hand touches the wall for balance, and the stone seems to draw warmth directly from your skin. At the upper landing, the air feels still but not gentle. Drafts slip beneath doors, around shutters, and through gaps in timber frames. Candle flames lean and recover. Somewhere farther along, a hinge clicks softly as the building settles beneath the frost. The castle is preparing to sleep. You enter a chamber reserved for a visiting knight and 2 companions. The room is smaller than the great hall, which already makes it easier to warm. A fire burns in the wall hearth, and its orange light moves across painted plaster, heavy chests and hanging fabric. The bed stands upon a raised wooden frame. Curtains surround it on every side, creating a room within the room. Their purpose is not merely decorative. They trap body heat, soften noise, block some drafts, and provide a measure of privacy. This is one of the clearest features of elite medieval sleeping arrangements. A grand bed is both furniture and architecture. Its posts support curtains, covers, and sometimes a canopy overhead, allowing warmth to gather around the sleeper. You draw closer and feel the difference immediately. Outside the curtains, cold air brushes your ankles. Inside, the enclosed space holds the scent of wool, linen, smoke, and recently warmed stones. The mattress rests on ropes or wooden supports. It may contain feathers for someone wealthy, though many beds use wool, straw, flock, or layered materials. The finest feather beds are valuable possessions and often appear in wills, inventories, and household accounts. A servant presses down on the bedding, checking for the lumps. Another smooths the linen sheet with both palms. Clean linen feels cool at first, but it is prized for comfort and status. The blankets above are thick wool, with fur possibly added for greater warmth. Nothing is light. Winter bedding accumulates in layers, and each layer has weight. Coverlets press gently over the body, limiting movement while holding precious warmth. The sensation may feel secure or slightly confining, depending upon your mood and how much smoke remains in the room. A warming pan has passed beneath the sheets. Its metal lid bears small perforations, allowing heat to escape while reducing direct contact with coals. The servant moves it slowly, never leaving it unattended. One unusual belief links warmed beds with health as well as comfort. Some household members may fear that sudden cold weakens the body or disturbs its internal balance. Entering a heated bed therefore feels sensible, medically reassuring, and wonderfully pleasant. It also reduces the shock of frozen linen. You imagine lying down after crossing an icy corridor. Your feet would seek the warmest place first. Hands might remain beneath the blankets while a servant fastens the curtains once enclosed. The noise of the castle would soften into distant footsteps and muted doors. Privacy remains limited. A knight may sleep beside a companion, servant, spouse, or child, depending upon circumstance. Beds are expensive, space is valuable, and shared sleeping is normal across much of medieval society. The modern expectation of one person per bed would seem wasteful in many households. You pass into an adjoining room where attendants prepare less elaborate bedding. 2 pallets lie near the wall, each made from straw packed into coarse fabric. The straw rustles when someone turns it, and sharp ends sometimes work through the covering. Fresh straw smells dry and faintly sweet. Old straw gathers dust, sweat, insects, and dampness. Households replace it when resources and schedules allow, though the exact frequency is difficult to establish. Surviving records leave uncertainty about how regularly bedding was renewed in different households. Wealthy castles may have changed straw and aired textiles more often, while poorer residents likely endured older materials longer. Local custom, season, and access to supplies all mattered. The attendants spread woolen blankets across the pallets. Their sleeping area has no private hearth, but warmth drifts through the wall from the larger chamber. It is not enough to make the room comfortable. It is enough to make it survivable. A narrow shutter covers the window. No glass protects this opening. Only timber and cloth packed along the edges. Frost marks the frame in pale branching lines. When you place your fingers nearby, cold air brushes them like water. The servant adds another strip of folded wool. Textiles perform constant defensive work throughout the castle. Tapestries cover walls, curtains divide spaces, rugs soften floors, and hangings surround beds. Stone provides strength, but cloth creates comfort. Even then, warmth remains uneven. You continue toward a communal sleeping chamber above the hall. Here, lower-ranking retainers arrange themselves across pallets, benches, and sections of floor. Cloaks become blankets, rolled tunics serve as pillows. Boots are placed close enough to protect them from theft and far enough from the fire to avoid scorching. The room smells of leather, damp wool, human breath, and smoke. Someone has rubbed animal fat into cracked shoes, adding a heavy, greasy scent. Another man hangs wet stockings near the hearth, where they steam gently. A dog circles twice before settling between 2 sleepers. Its body offers warmth, companionship, and flees with equal generosity. Nobody objects. The animal sighs deeply, already more comfortable than several people nearby. Among the more curious winter practices is stuffing footwear with straw, moss, wool scraps, or even dry leaves. Such padding can improve insulation, though it compresses quickly and must be replaced. Comfort depends upon what the household can spare. You lower yourself onto a straw pallet and feel it shift beneath your weight. The surface is uneven but not unbearable. A wool blanket scratches lightly against your wrist. The floor beneath remains cold enough to make every layer feel necessary. Conversation fades around you. One man tells a quiet story about a traveller lost in snow. Another mutters a prayer before lying down. Someone near the window coughs and pulls his hood tighter. The short fire cracks once, sending a tiny spark against the hearthstone. The chamber grows darker. Only one candle remains, set inside a proactive lantern. Candles are too valuable to waste through the night. Most sleepers depend upon banked coals, moonlight through cracks, a memory of the room's shape. Sleeping in darkness carries practical risks. A person rising to use a chamber pot may stumble over a pallet or boot. Servants moving through crowded rooms must step carefully. Fire is the greater danger, so flames require supervision. A watchful attendant covers the hearth with ash, preserving embers while reducing sparks. By morning, those coals may help relight the fire if they die completely. Someone must carry fresh flame from another room. Fire connects the household. One chamber may borrow embers from the kitchen. A servant may transport glowing coals in a covered vessel. Warmth moves through the castle as carefully as food, water, and news. You rise from the pallet and continue through a final doorway. This room belongs to children and their nurse. A broad bed fills much of the space, surrounded by curtains patched in several places. Two smaller forms sleep beneath the covers, while the nurse rests nearby. A cradle stands close to the hearth but not dangerously near. Its occupant is wrapped in linen and wool, with a cap covering the head. Medieval caregivers understand that infants need protection from cold, even though their methods and medical explanations differ from later practice. The nurse wakes briefly as the door opens. She checks the children, touches one forehead, then listens to the wind outside. Her attention never fully sleeps. Beyond the shutters, winter presses against the walls. Within the curtains, bodies create their own small climate. Breath warms enclosed air. Wool traps heat. Straw separates sleepers from cold boards. The castle does not defeat the night. It divides the cold into smaller spaces, then fills those spaces with fabric, fire, animals, and human closeness. Every bed becomes a shelter. Every curtain becomes a wall. You leave the sleepers behind and return to the upper passage. The candles are lower now, and the stone floor feels harder beneath your feet. From somewhere above comes the measured tread of a guard crossing the battlements, while the household folds itself into blankets. Others remain exposed to the wind. You follow that distant rhythm toward the stair leading upward, where the warm chambers end and the frozen watch begins. You climb the final stair and push through a narrow door onto the battlements. The wind meets you instantly, sharp enough to steal your breath. It pulls at your hood, slips beneath your cloak, and turns every exposed patch of skin painfully alert. Above, the sky appears vast and brittle. Moonlight rests across the walls, towers, and frozen fields beyond. Snow has softened the surrounding countryside into pale shapes, but the castle itself remains hard and angular. Merlins rise beside you like dark teeth, offering shelter only when the wind chooses the proper direction. A guard walks ahead with a lantern held low. Its flame struggles behind thin horn panels, brightening whenever his body shields it. His boots strike the stone with a slow, deliberate rhythm. He knows where ice gathers, where steps dip, and where careless feet might slide. You follow closely. The battlement's surface has been scattered with grit, ash, and crushed straw. These materials provide some traction, though nothing makes the wall truly safe. Frost shines along the parapet, and small icicles hang beneath projecting stones. The guard taps one with his glove. It breaks and vanishes into darkness. He wears a thick woolen tunic beneath a padded coat. A cloak covers his shoulders, fastened tightly so the wind cannot seize it. His hood is lined, and strips of cloth have been wrapped around his lower legs. Leather shoes alone offer poor protection, so wool, felt, and dry stuffing become essential. Even with layers, he is cold. Guard duty is a basic requirement of castle security. Men watch gates, walls, roads, courtyards, and approaches during daylight and darkness. The strength of fortifications means little if nobody notices an enemy arriving. Tonight, the threat may be less dramatic. A broken door, a stray fire, a frightened horse, or a thief near the stores could cause greater trouble than an attacking army. Watchmen listen for anything unusual, including sounds from within the castle itself. The guard pauses beside a crenel and looks across the outer ward. Below, only a few lamps remain visible. The kitchen roofs release thin smoke, while stable windows glow faintly through shutters. Most movement has retreated indoors. He listens. You hear the wind first, then the creak of timber somewhere near the gatehouse. A chain knocks against a post farther away. A dog barks twice, pauses, and answers another dog beyond the walls. No alarm follows. The guard continues. Maintaining awareness in this weather requires effort. Cold slows fingers, stiffens leather, and clouds thought. A tired watchman may stamp his feet, flex his hands, or walk repeated circuits to remain awake. Some households provide warm drinks for guards, particularly on severe nights. Ale, thin broth, or heated water flavoured with herbs may offer comfort. Whether such provisions arrive regularly depends upon rank, resources, and the generosity of whoever controls the kitchen. A small covered cup waits inside the next tower. The guard lifts it and sniffs. Steam no longer rises, but the drink remains warmer than the air. It contains weak ale mixed with spice and perhaps a little honey. He takes one swallow, then offers the cup to his companion. This modest kindness matters. One curious defence against cold involves sharing warmed stones or heated bricks among men on watch. A stone wrapped in cloth can be tucked beneath a cloak or placed near the feet. It loses heat quickly, yet for a brief time it feels almost luxurious. A younger guard carries such a bundle against his stomach. He guards it jealously. You enter the tower chamber, where the wind drops to a low whistle around the shutters. A brazier glows near the wall, surrounded by 3 men. Their faces brighten and dim with the coals. One mends a glove while another checks the leather binding on a spear shaft. Weapons require care in winter. Moisture encourages rust. Wooden shafts can warp or split. Bowstrings must remain dry, and metal surfaces become unpleasantly cold to touch. Soldiers use oil, cloth, and regular inspection to keep equipment ready. A crossbow rests upon a bench, its string unspanned to reduce strain. Nearby, a bundle of bolts lies wrapped in cloth. The men are not expecting battle, but readiness forms part of the household's discipline. Evidence remains unclear about how fully every castle was staffed during peaceful winter months. Some fortresses maintained substantial garrisons, while others relied upon smaller groups of household retainers and local men. Staffing depended upon politics, location, wealth, and perceived danger. The castle before you appears alert but not crowded. A guard near the arrow slit rubs his hands together. He has wedged wool around the opening, leaving only a narrow view outside. The solution reduces the draft, though it also limits visibility. Security and warmth rarely cooperate perfectly. You approach the slit. The field beyond lies empty except for drifting snow. A line of bare trees marks the road. Their branches click softly whenever the wind moves them, creating a sound like distant tapping. At first, you imagine footsteps. So does the guard. He leans forward, holds his breath, and watches the tree line. Everyone in the chamber becomes still. Even the brazier seems quieter. The tapping continues. Then a branch bends into the moonlight. The men relax without admitting concern. One makes a dry comment about the enemy employing trees as scouts. Another answers that trees might be more punctual than certain soldiers. Their humour is tired but effective. Gentle mockery helps break the monotony of the watch. Guards tell stories, exchange gossip, argue over dice, and complain about food. They must also avoid becoming so distracted that they miss danger. A small set of bone dice rests on the bench. Gambling may be discouraged or restricted, especially when it leads to quarrels. That does not stop men from rolling quietly when officers are elsewhere. The younger guard shakes the dice in his palm. His companion points toward you, suggesting that visitors bring bad luck. You decline the game with the wisdom of someone who prefers keeping imaginary wages. Outside again. The cold feels stronger after the tower's limited warmth. The wind has shifted, blowing directly across the wall walk. Snow grains strike your cheek with the faint sting of sand. You and the guard move toward the next tower. Below, the outer gate appears secure. Heavy bars hold the doors closed, and the portcullis remains ready. A watchman inside the gatehouse can challenge anyone approaching, while men above observe the road. Signals may involve bells, horns, shouted warnings, or prearranged calls in poor visibility. Sound becomes especially important. Snow can muffle footsteps and alter distance, and making familiar noises seem strangely near or far. The guard stops at a sheltered corner. He peers toward the village beyond the castle lands. Only darkness shows there. Most villagers have banked their fires and crowded into smaller rooms, much as the castle household has done. Their houses offer less stone and fewer defences, but timber, clay, and thatch can sometimes feel warmer than enormous masonry chambers. Castles impress the eye. Small homes often retain heat more efficiently. That thought carries gentle irony. The lord sleeps behind walls built to resist armies, while a village cottage may defeat a draft more effectively. You continue along the battlements, where the guard checks each position. He examines doors, shutters, and stored equipment. At one point, he clears snow from a drainage channel with the heel of his boot. Meltwater trapped on the wall could freeze again and damage stonework. Maintenance never sleeps for long. Inside another tower, a bell rope hangs near the entrance. The bell itself is modest, used for local warnings rather than grand ceremony. The guard tests the rope, producing one muted note. The sound travels across the ward. Below, a dog raises its head. No one else responds. The watch changes near midnight. Two fresh men arrive from the stair, carrying lanterns and wrapped cups. They look equally tired, despite having rested earlier. The outgoing guards exchange brief reports about noises, weather, and the condition of the walls. Nothing unusual has happened. That is success. The relieved men descend toward warmer quarters, rubbing their arms as they go. The new watch takes position without ceremony. One checks the road, while the other walks the circuit you have just completed. You remain beside the parapet for another moment. The castle stretches below, quiet beneath snow and smoke. Warm chambers seem far away now, hidden behind roofs and thick walls. The wind presses around you. A chapel bell sounds from the inner ward. Softer than the warning bell and measured with purpose, it marks the hour of prayer, calling those awake toward a different kind of shelter. You turn from the frozen battlements and follow the stair downward. Behind you, the guards continue their slow path beneath the moon. Ahead, candlelight glows faintly near the chapel door, where cold hands will fold together in the silence of midnight. You descend from the battlements while the chapel bell continues its measured call. Each note settles into the stairwell, softening as it passes through stone. The wind remains above you, but its voice grows distant with every turn. The bottom. A narrow corridor leads toward the inner ward. Candlelight trembles across the floor from an open doorway ahead. The air carries beeswax, cold incense, damp wool, and the faint mineral scent of frozen masonry. You enter quietly. The chapel is small compared with the Great Hall, yet it feels more carefully enclosed. Heavy curtains cover part of the entrance, and wooden screens divide the space. A single brazier glows near the side wall, offering limited warmth to those standing closest. Most people keep their cloaks fastened. A priest waits before the altar in layered vestments, his breath faintly visible when he turns from the candles. 2 clerks stand nearby with books held close to their chests. Several household members kneel upon cushions, folded cloth or bare stone. The cold floor reaches through everything. Midnight prayer belongs to a larger rhythm of religious observance. Monastic communities follow formal hours throughout the day and night, while noble households may maintain simpler versions through private chapels, resident clergy, and personal devotion. Not everyone in the castle attends every service. Some are working, sleeping, ill, or simply too far from the chapel when the bell sounds. Yet prayer shapes the household's sense of time as surely as meals, guard changes, and sunrise. You move toward the rear and stand beside a servant still smelling of kitchen smoke. His hands are red and cracked. He rubs them together once, then folds them carefully as the priest begins. Latin fills the room. Many listeners understand only parts of it, though repeated prayers, familiar gestures, and remembered melodies carry their own meaning. The words rise and fall with a cadence older than anyone present. The sound is gentle. A clerk responds from beside the altar, his voice thinner but clear. Wax drips down one candle and gathers along the holder. Another flame gutters when Coldest slips through the doorway, then steadies beneath a shielding hand. The altar is dressed with linen and a painted image. A small silver vessel catches the candlelight. Nearby, a reliquary rests behind a screen, believed to contain a fragment associated with a saint. Relics offer spiritual protection, status, and connection to sacred history. A castle chapel possessing an important relic might attract visitors, support local devotion, and strengthen the prestige of its lord. The authenticity of particular relics is often difficult to prove. Medieval worshippers may care less about modern standards of verification than about tradition, testimony, and communal belief. The object before them becomes meaningful through prayer, memory, and trust. You notice a woman touching a small pendant at her throat. It may hold a prayer, a symbol, or a tiny piece of blessed material. Amulets and devotional objects sit near the uncertain boundary between approved religion, household custom, and older protective beliefs. That boundary is rarely simple. One curious winter habit involved placing blessed candles near sickbeds or dangerous doorways. Their light was believed to offer more than visibility. It could represent divine protection against storms, illness, fear, and whatever might move unseen through darkness. The church did not approve every popular practice equally. Clergy might tolerate some customs, reshape others, or condemn them as superstition. Local habits could survive quietly despite official discomfort. The priest lifts his hands. Around you, heads bow. Outside, the wind presses against the shutters with a low, steady murmur. Somewhere in the roof, timber contracts and releases a sudden knock. Several people glance upward before returning their attention to prayer. Winter makes buildings speak. Cold beams creak. Ice cracks in gutters, animals shift behind walls. A person already nervous about spirits, omens, or wandering souls can interpret ordinary sounds with remarkable creativity. The year 1415 belongs to a world where the supernatural feels close. Saints, angels, demons, dreams, curses, and divine judgments form part of everyday explanation. That does not mean people lack practical reasoning. They can recognize a loose shutter while still wondering whether its timing carries meaning. Both thoughts may coexist comfortably. You hear a quiet rustle beside you. An elderly woman has brought a string of prayer beads, passing them slowly through stiff fingers. Her lips move without sound. Each bead gives her attention somewhere to rest. The household has many reasons to pray tonight. Travellers remain exposed on frozen roads. Livestock may weaken in the cold, stores may fail before spring, children may develop fevers. War continues across the Channel, where English forces have recently fought at Agincourt. News of victory brings pride, but also absence. Some men from this household may be overseas, injured, delayed, or dead. Messages travel slowly, and certainty arrives even more slowly. Families learn to live beside unanswered questions. The surviving evidence does not clearly show how deeply ordinary castle workers followed formal theology. Household accounts record chaplains, candles, offerings, and chapel equipment. But private belief, rarely appears in complete detail. A servant may repeat a prayer from devotion. Fear, habit, or all three, you cannot separate those motives from a ledger. The priest begins another passage, and the congregation shifts upon aching knees. Fabric whispers across stone, someone coughs behind a sleeve, the brazier gives a soft metallic tick as its iron frame cools. Incense is added to a small vessel. A fragrant thread rises into the chapel, carrying resinous sweetness through the colder air. It mixes with wax, wool, and smoke. The scent seems richer here than anywhere else in the castle, because the room contains so little food or animal odour. For a moment, the chapel feels warmer than it is. Painted walls contribute to that impression. Medieval religious interiors are often bright with colour rather than bare grey stone. Reds, blues, golds, and patterned borders surround sacred scenes, though smoke, age, and dampness gradually dull them. Candlelight makes the figures move. A saint's painted hand appears to lift as the flame flickers. The face above seems watchful, then distant, then watchful again. Such images help teach stories to those who cannot read, while also creating an atmosphere of sacred presence. Near the altar stands a small chest containing books and cloths. Manuscripts are costly, copied by hand upon parchment or paper. A chapel book must be protected from dampness, insects, careless fingers, and candle sparks. One clerk turns a page slowly. The parchment makes a dry, soft sound. His finger follows the text while he chants, perhaps because the light is poor or his eyes are tired. He leans closer without allowing his sleeve near the flame. Fire remains holy and hazardous. The service continues until time seems to loosen. You stop measuring minutes and begin noticing smaller things. Breath rises, wax softens, knees ache. The wind pauses, then returns. A child near the front has fallen asleep against her nurse. The nurse adjusts the girl's hood without interrupting prayer. Another attendant shifts closer, sharing the edge of a cloak. No one objects. The final responses come quietly. The priest lowers his hands, and the room releases a collective breath. People cross themselves, rise carefully, and gather their garments. Some remain behind. A knight kneels near the altar with his head bowed. The elderly woman continues moving her beads. A servant approaches a side image and touches the wooden frame before leaving. You follow the others toward the door. At the threshold, a clerk distributes tiny pieces of blessed bread left from an earlier observance. Customs vary, and the exact practice differs from place to place. Tonight, each person receives the morsel with solemn attention. It tastes dry and faintly smoky. Back in the corridor, conversation stays low. The chapel's quiet seems to travel with everyone for several steps. Then ordinary concerns return. A maid whispers about a sick child. A guard asks whether warm broth remains in the kitchen. Someone complains gently about the brazier, which offered more symbolism than heat. You pass through the inner ward beneath a sky now veiled by cloud. Snow falls again, finer than before. It gathers on your shoulders and melts along the edge of your hood. Across the courtyard, the stables remain awake. Horses stamp behind thick doors. A dog scratches at straw. Hens murmur from a sheltered corner. Disturbed by the bell and movement outside, the chapel has offered comfort against uncertainty. But the animals require something more immediate. They need fodder, water, dry bedding, and human attention before the cold deepens further. You cross toward the stable entrance, following the smell of hay and warm breath into the darkness. You step through the stable doorway and enter a warmer darkness filled with breathing animals. The change is immediate. Cold still clings to your cloak, yet the air inside feels softer, heavier, and unmistakably alive. Horses shift behind wooden partitions. Their hooves press into straw with dull, rhythmic thumps. Leather tack creaks from pegs along the wall. A chain rattles, then settles, somewhere near the far end. An animal blows sharply through its nostrils, sending a cloud of warm breath into the lamplight. The smell surrounds you. Hay, dung, leather, sweat, damp wood, and animal heat blend into one dense atmosphere. It is not pleasant in a delicate sense, but it feels comforting after the battlements. The stable holds warmth because many large bodies share a sheltered space. A groom closes the door firmly behind you. He checks the wooden bar, then pushes folded sacking into the gap below. Drafts remain dangerous here, especially when horses are damp from work or weakened by poor feeding. The stable must breathe enough to reduce foul air, yet not so freely that winter wind sweeps through. Balance matters everywhere. Medieval castles depend heavily upon horses. They carry messengers, pull carts, support hunting, move supplies, and transport armed men. A lord's prestige may also be measured through the quality and number of animals maintained. Not every horse is a war horse. Most are practical creatures bred or chosen for particular tasks. Pack animals carry burdens. Riding horses serve travellers and officials. Cart horses move fuel, grain, barrels, and building materials. Expensive chargers form only one part of a much larger working population. You approach a bay gelding standing near the central aisle. His coat shines where a groom has brushed away dried sweat. Frost still clings to the tips of his mane, slowly melting into dark beads. The groom runs both hands along the animal's legs. He checks for swelling, cuts, heat, and tenderness. Winter roads hide stones beneath snow, while frozen ground strains joints and hooves. A small injury can become serious if ignored, especially when the household depends upon that horse tomorrow. The gelding turns his head toward you. His breath smells of hay and grain. Warm air touches your fingers when you offer your hand. He investigates briefly, decides you are not edible, and returns to chewing. Fair enough. A manger beside him contains hay, mixed with a smaller measure of oats. Feeding depends upon the animal's work, status, and available stores. Good fodder must last through winter, when grazing becomes scarce or impossible. Hay quality can decline through dampness, mould, or careless storage. Grain attracts rats. Straw needed for bedding may also be demanded for roofing, packing, flooring, and human mattress. Every bundle has several possible uses. The castle's animals compete quietly with people for resources. A curious stable custom involves tying small bells or protective charms to valuable horses. Some are practical, helping handlers locate animals or hear movement. Others may reflect hopes for protection against illness, theft, bad luck, or unseen harm. One mare wears a tiny metal charm near her harness. The groom shrugs when you ask about it. Perhaps it belongs to an older custom, perhaps the owner simply likes the sound. Medieval objects often carry several meanings at once, and nobody feels obliged to choose only one. You move farther along the aisle. A stable boy carries water in a wooden bucket, walking slowly to avoid spilling. The surface gives off no steam, it was drawn recently, yet the cold has already bitten into it. Watering animals during a severe freeze requires constant labour. Ice must be broken in troughs, buckets carried before they stiffen, and containers checked for cracks. Horses cannot simply eat snow without consequences, despite what a tired servant might wish. The boy sets the bucket down. The horse drinks noisily. Lips stirring the surface, water drips from its muzzle and darkens the straw. The boy watches until the animal finishes, then lifts the heavier bucket again. His arms tremble slightly. You follow him into a side chamber where saddles hang from beams, felt pads, woolen cloths, bridles, girths, and harness pieces fill the space. Everything must be dried, cleaned, repaired, and protected from rodents. Leather stiffens in cold weather. Grooms soften it with oils or animal fats, though too much can weaken stitching or attract dirt. Metal fittings need inspection for rust. A failed strap on a frozen road can injure rider, horse, and anyone unfortunate enough to be standing nearby. Records do not always reveal how closely elite owners understood daily stable work. Some nobles possess deep practical knowledge of horses, especially through hunting and warfare. Others depended heavily upon experienced grooms who noticed details their masters never saw. The groom beside you knows every animal by sound. He identifies a restless horse before seeing it. He hears a loose shoe in the rhythm of a hoof. He notices when chewing stops too suddenly. This knowledge comes from long attention rather than formal books. A dog slips past your legs. It is lean, rough-coated, and entirely confident that the stable belongs to it. The animal circles a patch of straw, scratches twice, and lies near a horse's stall where warmth collects. Dogs serve many roles around castles. Large hounds assist with hunting. Mastiff-like animals may guard gates, yards, or livestock. Smaller dogs keep company indoors and sometimes hunt vermin. Their feeding, housing, and status vary enormously. This dog appears to be a practical opportunist. It accepts scraps, warmth, and affection from whoever offers them. A leather collar shows that someone claims responsibility, although responsibility may include shouting its name occasionally and hoping for the best. From an adjoining space comes the restless flutter of birds. You step through a low opening and find hens roosting above the floor. Their feathers puff outward against the cold, making each bird appear rounder. A rooster opens one eye, considers announcing your arrival, then wisely remains silent. Poultry provide eggs, meat, feathers, and reliable noise. In winter, egg production often declines as daylight shortens and feed becomes limited. Keeping birds sheltered helps protect them from foxes, cold, and theft. The coop smells sharper than the stable. Dry droppings, feathers, grain dust, and old straw cling to the air. A servant scatters a handful of feed, careful not to waste a single kernel. The birds descend with sudden enthusiasm, pecking around his boots. One hen finds nothing and looks personally offended. Nearby, 2 geese stand behind a wicker barrier. Their watchfulness makes them surprisingly useful alarms. Geese react loudly to strangers, movement, and almost anything else they consider suspicious. Tonight, they mutter but do not erupt. The servant tells you that one goose once chased a visiting clerk across the ward. Whether the story is accurate hardly matters. Everyone remembers the clerk, while the goose enjoys permanent victory. Beyond the poultry area lies a sheltered pen containing 2 pigs. They root through straw with determined snorts. Pigs consume scraps and can convert kitchen waste into valuable meat, making them useful members of the household economy. They also escape whenever possible. Stone castles may appear orderly from a distance, yet animal management brings constant improvisation. Gates break. Ropes loosen. Chickens vanish. Dogs steal food. Horses kick partitions. Pigs discover weaknesses in fences with the concentration of trained engineers. Evidence differs concerning how many livestock remained inside castle walls throughout winter. Some sites housed animals in outer wards, nearby farms, or specialized buildings beyond the main enclosure. Space, security, disease, fodder, and local custom shaped each arrangement. This castle keeps only selected animals close. The rest likely shelter on surrounding estates, where herds, flocks, and workers support the fortified household. The castle is not isolated from the countryside. It sits at the centre of a wider system of fields, mills, woodland, villages, roads, and labour. A cat appears upon a beam overhead. Its eyes catch the lantern light. It watches the grain store below with patient interest. Waiting for mice, cats receive mixed treatment in medieval culture, ranging from valued pest control to uneasy superstition. This one has a job. It drops silently onto a barrel, stretches, and disappears behind stacked sacks. A faint squeak follows, then nothing. The groom begins banking a small stable lantern. Open flame must be controlled carefully around straw. Hay, wood, and dust. Fire could destroy the building before sleeping servants understand what has happened. Most stable work continues under weak light. Hands learn the shape of buckles and knots by touch. Familiar animals are guided through sound and pressure. The darkness is inconvenient, but a bright flame is more dangerous. You return to the central aisle. The horses are quieter now. Some rest standing, while others shift one hind leg and lower their heads. The dog has curled tightly into itself. Hens murmur above their bedding, and the pigs continue their endless investigation of straw. Animal warmth fills the building, but comfort depends upon human care. Grooms bring water, measure fodder, clear waste, mend tack, and watch for sickness. In return, the animals move people, carry burdens, guard spaces, provide food, and soften the winter with their breathing presence. You rest your palm against the bay gelding's neck. Heat rises through his coat steady and deep for a moment. The stable feels like the warmest place in the castle. Then a groom lifts a forkful of soiled straw, and romance quietly departs. A side door opens near the far wall. Cold air enters, carrying the smell of snow and refuse. Two servants step through with buckets, moving toward the yard where waste is emptied. Beyond them, a covered passage leads toward wells, drains, and frozen privies. You leave the animals settling behind you and follow the buckets into the night, where the castle's least graceful necessities wait beneath the frost. You follow the servants through the side door, where stable warmth disappears behind you. The cold returns with a clean, unforgiving force. Snow gathers in the corners of the yard while frozen mud forms ridges beneath your boots. The two servants carry covered buckets at arm's length. Neither speaks. Their route is familiar, unpleasant, and best completed quickly. A lantern swings between them, throwing pale light across walls, drains, and a narrow passage leading toward the service yard. Here, the castle reveals another face. The grand hall, chapel, and chambers depend upon systems that visitors rarely admire. Water must enter, waste must leave, floors must be scrubbed, pots emptied, and wells protected from contamination. Civilization often begins with a bucket. You pass a stone channel running beside the wall. During milder weather, rainwater and washing water may flow through it toward a drain. Tonight, ice has formed along the edges, creating ridged patterns that shine beneath the lantern. A servant strikes the frozen channel with a wooden tool. The ice cracks reluctantly. Blocked drains can force dirty water back into courtyards and passages. In severe cold, workers must clear channels before the next thaw releases everything at once. The task is slow, damp, and guaranteed to freeze the fingers. The servant mutters under his breath. He is not cursing the weather with great originality, but sincerity matters more than poetry. Ahead, a small building stands against the inner wall. Its door opens onto a narrow passage containing several privy seats. These are garderobes, latrines built into or projecting from castle walls. Their design can be simple. A wooden or stone seat rests above a vertical shaft. Waste falls into a pit, ditch, cess chamber, or open space below, and shafts empty beyond the outer wall. Using gravity rather than any complicated flushing system, the arrangement is practical, if not fragrant. You enter carefully. Cold air rises through the opening beneath the seat, making the chamber feel colder than the yard. The wooden surface has been covered with folded cloth, though sitting here would still require determination. A small lamp burns in a wall niche. Beside it rests a basket containing dry moss, hay, scraps of cloth, and smooth leaves. These materials may serve for cleaning after use. Paper is not available as an ordinary household convenience, and nobody has placed a scented roll nearby. A lesser-known feature of some garderobes is their possible use for storing clothing. The word itself later becomes connected with wardrobes. Strong odours and airflow may have been believed to discourage moths or other pests from damaging fabric. Whether garments were routinely stored beside latrine shafts remains uncertain. Architectural evidence and later interpretation do not provide one simple answer for every castle. Some spaces may have served several purposes across different periods. Tonight, no fine robe hangs here, only a servant's spare cloak rests on a peg, and even that seems optimistic. The bucket carriers move towards an access point beneath the privies. One man unlocks a low door with an iron key. A heavy smell escapes, muted somewhat by the freezing temperature. Cold slows decay but does not create cleanliness. Cesspits and waste chambers require periodic emptying. Specialized workers may remove the contents, sometimes carrying it beyond inhabited areas in towns. Such labor becomes an organized trade, performed at night to reduce disturbance. Castle households face the same basic necessity. The servants empty their buckets with practiced movements, then rinse them using a smaller supply of water. They do not waste much. Clean water is too valuable, especially while the wells are difficult to operate. You continue toward the main well in the ward. It stands beneath a timber shelter, protected from snowfall and falling debris. A low stone wall surrounds the opening. The wooden winding mechanism above has been wrapped in cloth where hands must grip it. A watchful servant removes the cover. Darkness drops below you. Castle wells can be impressively deep, particularly on rocky or elevated sites. Digging them requires skilled labour, time, and enormous expense. Yet secure water access may determine whether a fortress can resist a siege. Tonight, the well serves more ordinary needs. A bucket descends on a rope, knocking softly against stone. The sound travels downward and returns as a faint echo. After several moments, you hear the splash. The servant turns the windlass. The mechanism groans under the weight. Ice has stiffened the rope, making it rough and resistant. His shoulders tighten with each pull. When the bucket reaches the top, thin steam appears above the water. The water is not truly warm, but underground temperatures can remain higher than the frozen air. Beside the night wind, it almost seems inviting. The servant pours it into covered containers. Water will be carried to kitchens, chambers, stables, and washing areas. Some may be hoided for guests or sick household members. Much of it will remain cold because fuel cannot be spent casually. Fresh water is more common in medieval daily life than grim legends suggest. People drink from wells, springs, streams, and collected rainwater when sources appear safe. They also recognize bad taste. foul smell and obvious contamination. Their understanding of invisible disease is limited. They do not know about bacteria as later science defines them. Yet experience teaches caution. Water near waste can cause illness. Stagnant pools are suspicious. A covered well is safer than an open puddle beside the stable. One established household practice is separating cleaner water sources from drains, latrines, and latrines whenever architecture allows. The success of that separation varies greatly. Castle builders must work with slopes, existing walls, available space, and the inconvenient habits of gravity. You look across the yard. The privies stand downhill from the well, at least in theory. Snow hides the exact drainage patterns. Whoever planned the castle understood that waste should move away from drinking water. Whether that always happened perfectly is doubtful. A young maid arrives with 2 smaller jugs. She waits while the well servant fills them, then wipes each rim with a cloth. One jug is meant for a noble chamber, the other will go to the infirmary. Different water may be chosen for different purposes. Rainwater is soft and useful for washing. Well water may taste mineral-rich. River water can be convenient but vulnerable to upstream pollution. Households learn the qualities of local sources through long familiarity. A curious winter problem appears when washing water freezes before workers finish using it. Laundry becomes especially difficult. Since wet cloth stiffens outdoors and takes longer to dry inside smoky rooms, you pass a covered washing area where a tub stands near the wall. Its surface has formed a thin layer of ice. A laundress breaks it with a ladle, then pours in heated water from a kettle. Steam rises around her face, carrying the smell of lye, ash, and damp linen. Laundry requires exhausting work. Cloth may be soaked, scrubbed, beaten, rinsed, wrung, dried, and aired. Soap can be made from fats and alkaline substances, while wood ash assists with cleaning. Fine fabrics require greater care than household linens. Winter makes every stage slower. The laundress plunges her hands into the warm water. Relief appears briefly across her expression. Then she lifts a sheet heavy enough to pull her forward. Another woman helps twist it. Their movements are synchronized, learned through repetition. Water runs onto the floor and toward the frozen channel you saw earlier. A servant follows with a broom, pushing it onward before it freezes into another hazard. Personal washing also continues despite the cold. People may wash hands and faces from basins, use cloths to clean the body, or bathe more fully when circumstances allow. Wealthy household members can request warmed water, tubs, attendants, and clean linen. The popular image of universal medieval filth is exaggerated. Standards differ from modern habits, and access varies by rank and season. Still, people notice dirt, sweat, lice, odours, and stained clothing. They wash when resources, privacy, time, and temperature permit. A barber may also provide grooming services, including haircutting, shaving, and certain medical procedures. Combs are common possessions. Fine-toothed versions help remove lice and nits, though no one announces this service at supper. Near the laundry, a servant heats stones beside a small fire. They will be placed beneath a tub to help maintain warmth. This method demands care, because overheated stones may crack or damage the vessel. The servant tests one by sprinkling water across its surface. It hisses softly. The sound is strangely soothing. Farther along, a drain opening disappears beneath an iron grate. Workers have cleared so from around it. Kitchen water, washing runoff, and melted ice may all pass through this route when the weather allows. No drainage system removes every problem. Grease congeals or straw blocks channels, rats enter through gaps, frost seals openings. The household answers with scraping, sweeping, carrying, and language too impolite for the chapel. The documentary record offers only fragments about how often castle privies and cesspits were cleaned. Payments sometimes mention labourers, repairs, carts, or waste removal. But daily routines often vanish from written sources. The absence of detail does not mean the work was absent. Someone always dealt with it. You turn back toward the inner passage as the servant finish rinsing their buckets. The night air smells cleaner after the latrine chamber, though smoke and stable odour still drift through the ward. Behind you, the well rope creaks again. Ahead, a maid carries warmed water toward a room where someone has fallen ill. The basin in her hands releases a ribbon of steam. She walks carefully, protecting every drop from the cold. You follow her toward the infirmary, leaving drains, privies, and frozen channels to the workers who keep the castle habitable. Inside the next chamber, herbs hang near the fire, and tired hands prepare remedies for bodies that winter has begun to weaken. You follow the maid carrying warm water through a low doorway near the chapel passage. The room beyond is quieter than the kitchen and warmer than the corridor, though only because a small fire burns beneath a clay pot. Bundles of herbs hang from the rafters. Their scents mingle in the dim air. Sweet, bitter, earthy, and sharp. You notice sage, rosemary, mint, and dried flowers tied with thread. Near the window, covered jars stand beside folded cloths, wooden spoons, and a shallow brass basin. This is not a hospital in the modern sense. A castle may have an infirmary room, a sick chamber, or simply a quieter space prepared when someone becomes unwell. Care often takes place wherever warmth, privacy, and attendance can be found. Tonight, 3 people rest here. An elderly retainer lies beneath layered blankets on a narrow bed. His face appears flushed despite the cold. Across the room, a kitchen servant sits with one foot raised on a stool, wrapped in cloth after slipping near the frozen drain. The third patient is a child. She sleeps beside the hearth, watched by a woman grinding herbs with a stone pestle. Each movement produces a soft scrape against the bowl. The maid sets down the water. Steam rises briefly, carrying the clean mineral smell of the well. The healer dips a cloth into the basin, wrings it carefully, and places it across the child's forehead. Her hands move with confidence. Medieval healing combines practical observation, inherited tradition, religious belief, and classical medical theory. Remedies can include herbs, diet, rest, prayer, surgery, tissue, bathing, and attempts to restore balance within the body. The theory of the 4 humours remains influential. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile are believed to shape health and temperament. Illness may be interpreted as an imbalance caused by food, weather, age, emotion, or seasonal conditions. Winter is considered cold and moist. A healer might therefore recommend warming foods, spices, dry surroundings, and particular drinks. The reasoning differs from modern medicine. Yet some treatments still bring comfort through hydration, nourishment, warmth, or simple rest. The elderly man opens his eyes. His breathing sounds rough, and a cough shakes beneath the blankets. The healer lifts a cup toward him. It contains warm ale mixed with honey and herbs, perhaps intended to soothe his throat and help him sleep. He drinks slowly. Honey can ease irritation, while warmth relaxes tense muscles. Nobody in the room understands microbes, but they understand that are chilled. Exhausted person may improve after warmth, food, and quiet. Experience teaches many useful lessons. It also teaches some dangerous ones. Bloodletting remains a respected treatment for certain conditions, based upon the idea that excess or corrupted blood contributes to illness. A physician, surgeon, barber, or trained practitioner may open a vein or apply leeches. The practice is not used for every complaint. Timing, age, strength, season, and astrological considerations can influence the decision. A careful practitioner may avoid bleeding someone already weak, while another may follow theory more rigidly. No bleeding bowl appears tonight. The healer has decided the old man needs warmth rather than further loss. She adds another blanket and checks whether his feet remain cold. Near the wall, a small book lies open beside the jars. Its pages contain recipes written in a careful hand. Some instructions use exact quantities, while others rely upon phrases such as a little, enough, or as much as required. Household medicine often passes through memory and manuscript together. Women managing noble households may oversee still rooms, herb gardens, ointments, cordials, and remedies. Monastic communities also preserve medical learning. While university-trained physicians serve wealthy patients in important towns and courts, most people never see an elite physician. They depend upon family knowledge. Local healers, midwives, clergy, barbers, and experienced household members. The person treating you may have learned through years of repetition rather than formal schooling. You watch the healer prepare a poultice. She mixes crushed herbs with warm fat and softened bread, creating a thick paste. This is spread onto cloth and placed around the kitchen servant's swollen ankle. The smell is powerful. Garlic, grease, vinegar, and something bitter rise together. The servant turns his face away but does not protest. His ankle hurts more than his pride. Poultices can warm tissue, protect wounds, or soothe soreness. Some ingredients may help, some remain harmless, and others risk irritation. The exact results depend upon the substance, cleanliness, injury, and good fortune. The surviving recipes rarely tell you how often they succeeded. A remedy copied many times may have worked, carried authority, or simply belonged to a respected tradition. Failure is less likely to receive careful documentation, especially when the patient eventually recovered for unrelated reasons. Evidence points in several directions. You cannot always separate effective treatment from ritual, coincidence, and hope. The healer unwraps a smaller packet from a wooden chest. Inside lies a dried piece of animal material, carefully labelled. Medieval medical collections sometimes include ingredients that now seem astonishing, including powdered horn, animal fat, bone, earth, precious stones, and substances gathered under special conditions. One recipe might demand herbs picked before sunrise. Another may specify a prayer repeated during preparation. Certain numbers, days, and planetary positions are believed to affect a medicine's strength. The healer does not use the strange packet. She chooses mint instead, which feels reassuring. A small brazier glows beside the child's bed. The nurse adjusts its position, careful to keep fumes away from the sleeper. Ventilation remains difficult. Too much draught worsens the cold, while too little fresh air allows smoke and stale breath to thicken. The child stirs, her cheeks are warm, and sweat dampens the hair around her temples. The nurse changes the cloth on her forehead, then offers a few drops of water drink from a spoon. Fever is frightening, without modern temperature measurement. Caregivers judge heat through touch. Appearance, breathing, thirst, restlessness, and changes in speech. They may notice patterns very accurately even when their explanations differ. Prayer accompanies treatment. A small cross hangs above the bed. The nurse whispers a familiar phrase while adjusting the blanket. Nobody sees a contradiction between medicine and faith. Healing may come through herbs, skilled hands, saints, divine mercy, or all of them together. Another servant enters with a bowl of broth. He carries it carefully across the room, avoiding the injured man's extended foot. The broth smells of onions, parsley, grain, and chicken fat. Food is medicine here. A weak patient may receive light pottage, soft bread, eggs, broth, or diluted wine depending upon status and advice. Heavy or strongly seasoned foods might be avoided during certain illnesses. Diet follows medical theory as well as appetite. Warm and dry foods may be chosen against a cold condition. Cooling foods might be offered for fever, individual constitution matters, since people are thought to possess different natural balances. The old retainer receives several spoonfuls. He complains that the broth needs salt. The healer tells him that complaining is evidence of improvement. Even the child smiles faintly. A barber surgeon arrives carrying a leather case. He removes his gloves near the fire and examines the injured ankle. His fingers press around the swelling while the servant clenches his jaw. The barber surgeon may perform practical procedures such as setting bones, treating wounds, pulling teeth, lancing swellings, and managing certain injuries. His skills occupy a different social and educational world from those of a university physician. He decides the ankle is not broken. The conclusion comes through touch, movement, and experience. He wraps it more firmly, recommends rest, and receives a look suggesting that rest is a privilege found mainly in noble chambers. The kitchen still needs workers. The healer intervenes, insisting that the servant remain seated until morning. Her authority appears strong enough to delay at least one pot from being scrubbed. An unexpected medical habit concerns urine examination. Practitioners may study its colour, clarity, sediment, smell, and quantity, believing it reveals internal conditions. Special glass vessels are sometimes used. Medical illustrations often show physicians holding urine flasks toward the light. The practice becomes so closely associated with the profession that the flask itself serves almost like a symbol. No one in the room seems eager to demonstrate. A covered vessel sits discreetly beneath the old man's bed, waiting for later inspection. You choose to admire the herb bundles instead. The fire sinks lower. A servant adds one split log, then closes the screen. Fuel remains limited, but sick bodies receive priority when possible. Warmth itself becomes part of treatment, especially when chills, weakness, and winter exposure combine. The healer checks each patient again. The child's breathing has steadied. The injured servant leans back against the wall, his ankle secured. The old retainer sleeps without the cup still near his hand. Nothing has been cured with certainty. Still, each person is warmer, cleaner, calmer, and watched. That matters. You leave the infirmary quietly, carrying the scent of mint and smoke into the passage. Behind you, the healer continues grinding herbs beneath the low flame. Ahead, soft footsteps and a child's whisper drift from the household rooms. While sickness interrupts the night, younger lives continue within the castle, learning its rules, inventing games, and turning even severe winter into a world of curiosity. You follow the faint whisper along the passage until it leads toward a chamber near the nursery. The door stands slightly open, releasing a thread of warmth and the smell of beeswax, wool, and warm milk. Inside, the two children are still awake. One lies beneath a blanket beside the nurse, pretending to sleep whenever she looks over. The other sits cross-legged near the hearth, turning a carved wooden horse between both hands. The toy has lost one ear. Its remaining features are simple, but the child guides it across the floor with complete seriousness. A folded blanket becomes a hill. A wooden box becomes a castle. A spoon becomes a sword, though the nurse quietly removes that part before anyone loses an eye. Childhood inside the castle follows rank. Noble children may sleep in guarded chambers, receive lessons, and grow surrounded by servants. Children of cooks, grooms, laundresses, and guards learn work earlier, often beside the adults who support them. Yet all children share certain habits. They become bored during bad weather. They dislike cold washing water. They ask questions when adults want silence. They also discover that a corridor makes an excellent racing track until a steward appears. The nurse finally notices you and raises one finger. The room settles again. Caring for children is a central household duty. Nurses, attendants, tutors, chaplains, relatives, and servants all contribute. Depending upon wealth and circumstance, a noble infant might be placed with a wet nurse. This woman provides milk, constant supervision, and close physical care. Choosing her can involve concerns about health, morality, temperament, and social standing. Since people believe character may pass through milk, the exact frequency of wet nursing varies widely. Some mothers nurse their own children, while others rely upon household or hired women. Surviving documents reveal contracts, payments, gifts, and disputes, but they rarely capture every private decision. The nurse beside you appears deeply familiar with her charges. She recognizes each breath, cough, and restless turn. When the younger child begins murmuring, she reaches out without looking and adjusts the blanket. The motion is automatic. A cradle stands nearby. Though it is empty tonight, its curved base allows it to rock gently under one hand or foot. Linen bands hang folded over the side. Hands. Used for wrapping infants securely, swaddling remains common. Supporters believe it keeps limbs straight, preserves warmth, and protects a fragile body. Modern viewers often imagine it as harsh, but practice probably ranges from careful wrapping to excessive restriction. No single description fits every household. The older child rises from the hearth and crosses to a small table. Wax tablets lie there beside a wooden stylus. He scratches uncertain letters into the dark surface, then smooths them away with the flat end. Education begins according to expectation. A boy intended for clerical or administrative work may learn Latin, reading, writing, numbers, and religious instruction. A future knight studies manners, riding, weapon handling, hunting, and household service. Girls in noble families may learn reading, music, religion, estate management, textiles, and the social skills expected at court. Their opportunities depend greatly upon family ambition, local custom, and available teachers. You lean over the tablet. The letters are crooked, but recognizable. The boy looks proud until the nurse corrects one mark. His expression collapses with the dignity of someone suffering a profound scholarly injustice. Lessons are not always formal. Children learn by watching adults handle keys, accounts, animals, tools, cloth, food, and guests. A daughter may observe her mother supervising stores. A servant's son may follow his father through the stable. Skills pass through repetition long before anyone explains them. Near the window, a small girl threads wool through a piece of coarse fabric. The stitches wander in every direction. Her attendant does not undo them. Practice matters more than beauty tonight. Textile work occupies many women and girls within medieval households. Spinning, sewing, mending, embroidery, and cloth management require patience and skill. Even elite women may participate. Fine embroidery can become a mark of status. Devotion and artistic accomplishment. Church vestments, altar cloths, garments, and household textiles may carry complex designs created over months or years. The child's wool bird resembles a turnip. No one mentions this. A curious feature of medieval play is how often adult life appears in miniature. Children use small carts, dolls, toy animals, whistles, balls, imitation household objects. Archaeological finds include tiny cooking pots, figurines, and pieces that may have belonged to games. Some objects remain difficult to classify. A small clay horse might be a toy, an offering, a decoration, or something used for several purposes. The soil preserves the object, but not the child's intention. Tonight, there is no uncertainty about the wooden horse. It is charging across the blanket hill again. You hear laughter from the corridor. 3 older children hurry past before a page catches them. He speaks sternly, though not very convincingly. One child carries a set of knuckle bones in a pouch. Knuckle bones can be tossed and caught in games resembling later jacks. They may come from sheep or other animals, cleaned and sometimes polished. Simple games require little space. Children play with dice, counters, riddles, songs, chasing games. and wherever objects survive adult supervision. Winter keeps them indoors more often, increasing noise and testing everyone's patience. A boy near the door rolls a hoop against the wall. The nurse stops it with her foot. Her silence is impressive. Children are not separated from work as completely as many modern assumptions suggest, by adolescence, and often earlier. They may serve, train, learn trades, or enter other households. A noble boy might become a page around 7 years old, though ages and customs differ. He learns service before commanding others, carrying messages, assisting at table, and observing courtly behaviour. A girl may join another noble household for education and social preparation. Such movement builds alliances and teaches customs beyond the family home. For servant children, training is often more immediate. A kitchen child carries small items. A stable child brushes a quiet horse. A laundress's daughter sorts cloth or fetches water according to strength. Child labour exists, but childhood does not disappear. They still play badly timed games and fall asleep during prayers. A young page enters carrying a covered cup for the nurse. His clothing is finer than that of a scullion, yet his face remains unmistakably sleepy. He bows. The gesture is careful, learned, and slightly unsteady. Pages are expected to absorb manners through constant exposure. They observe how guests are addressed, where cups are placed, and when silence matters. Errors bring correction. Some households teach through patience. Others rely upon humiliation or physical punishment. The evidence shows both. Though private discipline is unevenly recorded, the page hands over the cup without spilling. Tonight, that is victory. The nurse gives him a piece of bread in return. He tucks it into his sleeve, likely intending to eat it before another servant notices. Food shapes childhood strongly. Milk, pottage, bread, eggs, broth, and soft foods appear often in care. Wealthier children may receive finer bread, meat, fruit preserves, spices, and sweetened preparations. Sugar remains expensive. Honey offers the more familiar sweetness. A child given a honeyed treat may remember it for days, particularly during winter when fresh fruit has vanished. The smallest child wakes and asks for a story. The nurse considers refusing, then settles beside the bed. She tells of a fox who steals a goose and discovers the goose has several angry relatives. The story grows stranger with every sentence. Oral tales teach caution, humour, courage, obedience, and the dangers of stealing from unusually organised poultry. They also pass time when darkness arrives early and candles must be conserved. You listen as the child's eyes begin to close. The room quiets around the tale. Wool brushes softly beneath the girl's needle. The hearth gives a low crack. Snow taps against the shutter like tiny fingertips. For all its dangers, the castle offers children a dense human world. Servants know their names. Relatives watch their progress, clergy teach prayers, grooms introduce horses, cooks provide scraps when stewards look elsewhere. The household raises them collectively, though affection and protection remain shaped by status. A servant's child may be loved deeply but possess fewer safeguards. Illness, hunger, accident, and cold threaten every family. While wealth reduces some risks without removing them, child mortality is high. Parents know grief more closely than they wish, yet they still commission toys, preserve small garments, arrange lessons, and worry through feverish nights. The presence of loss does not erase tenderness. The nurse finishes her story. The fox escapes. The geese recover their dignity, and the child finally sleeps. Curtains are drawn around the bed. The carved horse is placed beside the pillow. Missing ear and all, you step back into the passage. Behind you, the chamber settles into shallow sleep, guarded by the nurse and the faint red hearth. Ahead, a woman carrying account tablets speaks quietly with a steward near the stairs. She is reviewing stores before morning. You follow leaving the children's dreams behind as the hidden administration of the castle continues under female hands. You follow the woman with the account tablets into a chamber beside the upper stairs. A steward walks beside her, carrying a lantern and several keys. Their voices remain low, but neither sounds sleepy. The room serves as both workspace and storage office. Chests stand against the walls, each fitted with iron locks. Shelves hold folded cloth, sealed jars, wax tablets, parchment rolls, and bundles of tally sticks. A small fire burns nearby, its heat barely reaches the table, where the woman sets down her tablets. She removes one glove, flexes her fingers, and begins checking marks against a written list. This is the lady of the castle. She may be the lord's wife, a widowed relative, or another trusted noblewoman acting with delegated authority. Her exact position matters less than the work before her. While public ceremonies emphasize male lordship, household survival often depends upon women managing complex domestic systems. She asks about the remaining candles. The steward gives a number. She asks about grain, salt, dried fish, clean linen, lamp oil, and fodder. Each answer leads to another question. Supplies that appear abundant in autumn can shrink quickly during severe weather. Winter punishes poor accounting. A castle household consumes food, fuel, cloth, wax, water, and animal feed every day. Guests may arrive unexpectedly, roads may become impassable, deliveries can fail. A prudent manager must know not only what remains, but how long it may last. The lady runs one finger down the tablet. Her nail pauses beside the record for firewood. Too much has been used. The steward explains that the infirmary, nursery, and guest chambers required extra fuel. She listens without visible anger, then orders tomorrow's distribution reduced in less essential rooms. No one argues about which rooms those might be. Household authority depends upon decisions that are practical, social, and sometimes uncomfortable. Rank protects certain people from hardship, but even noble comfort has limits when stores decline. The fire cracks softly. A maid enters carrying folded table linen. She lays each piece across a bench for inspection. One cloth bears a dark stain that has resisted washing. The lady examines it. She decides the cloth can be cut and reused for smaller household purposes. Fine linen is too valuable to discard because one corner has lost its elegance. Textiles represent wealth in portable form. Bed, curtains, garments, tapestries, altar cloths, towels, and table coverings require enormous labour. Flax must be grown and processed, wool must be cleaned, carded, spun, dyed, woven, cut, and sewn. Women often supervise much of this work. Their involvement ranges from direct spinning and embroidery to managing servants, purchasing materials, inspecting quality, and distributing finished cloth. A noble woman may oversee workshops and storerooms containing goods worth substantial sums. You move toward an open chest. Inside lie woolen blankets arranged by quality. The finest are reserved for guests and senior family members. Coarser pieces serve retainers, servants, and emergency use. The lady asks for 2 blankets to be moved to the nursery. The maid hesitates. Those blankets were intended for a visiting cleric expected later in the week. The lady glances towards the shutter. Where snow presses against the outer ledge, the cleric is unlikely to arrive. The children are already here. The decision is made. One revealing feature of medieval household management is its reliance upon flexible judgment. Written rules and customary hierarchies matter, yet changing weather, illness, travel, and shortages force constant adjustment. A successful manager cannot merely follow a list. She must understand people, supplies, seasons, and consequences. She must also know when servants are telling the truth. Another woman enters carrying keys to the pantry. She reports that one cheese is spoiled near the outer wall. Dampness entered through cracked plaster, and the rind has softened badly. The lady requests to see it. No one seems delighted. The cheese arrives wrapped in cloth. Its smell reaches you before the servant opens the bundle. The lady examines the damaged section and decides part can be cut away for kitchen use. The rest will feed animals. Waste is regrettable, but poisoning the household would be worse. A less familiar responsibility of elite women involves hospitality. Guests must be housed, fed, seated according to rank, and provided with attendance. Gifts may be exchanged, clothing offered, and delicate disputes managed without open embarrassment. Hospitality displays power. A generous table strengthens reputation, while obvious disorder suggests weakness. The lady therefore controls not merely blankets and broth, but the image of the household itself, tonight. That image must survive limited candles and frozen roads. She discusses tomorrow's meal with a senior kitchen servant. Salted fish remains plentiful, but fresh meat is becoming scarce. The poultry yard can provide only a few birds without reducing future egg supply. The lady chooses a thick pottage, fish, bread, cheese, and a smaller meat dish for the high table. Everyone else will manage. Her decisions follow both economy and religious expectation. The church calendar may restrict certain foods, while status determines who receives the finest portions. The kitchen servant bows and departs. The lady then turns to medicine. She asks whether the child's fever has fallen. A maid reports that the healer remains cautiously hopeful. The lady orders more honey released from a locked store. Honey is valuable enough to control carefully. It sweetens food, preserves fruit, flavors drinks, and appears in remedies. Beeswax from the same hives provides cleaner, more prestigious candles than tallow. The records do not clearly reveal how personally noble women supervised every domestic detail. Some likely managed closely, while others delegated heavily to stewards and senior servants. Wealth, personality, absence, illness, and household scale shape the arrangement. This lady appears attentive. She knows which chamber leaks, which servant has an injured ankle, and which child dislikes bitter medicine. Her knowledge is administrative but also personal. A young seamstress approaches the table with a torn fur lining. The damage comes from moths or mice. The lady touches the edge, studies the remaining material, and instructs her to salvage the sound pieces. Fur offers excellent insulation, though its type and quality reflect wealth. Squirrel, rabbit, lamb, and more luxurious pelts may line garments or bedding. Sumptuary expectations and social custom help distinguish who may wear what. The seamstress gathers the fur. Her fingers bear tiny needle marks. Another worker arrives with a spindle tucked into her belt. She reports that the spinning room needs more lamp oil if work continues after dark. The request creates a small silence. Oil must be conserved, so must thread production. The lady considers both needs, then orders the workers to stop earlier and use daylight tomorrow. The winter night wins that argument. Women across the castle work at many social levels. Noble women direct estates and households. Servants cook, clean, wash, sew, nurse, carry, and tend fires. Midwives and healers hold specialized knowledge. Some women manage markets, workshops, or property. Widows may possess particular legal and economic independence, though their rights vary according to region, status, and circumstance. Medieval life offers restrictions, but not one simple patness of female powerlessness. You follow the lady into a smaller adjoining room. Here, a writing desk stands beneath a shuttered window. Sealed letters rest beside a knife and wax. One letter concerns rents owed from nearby lands. Another reports storm damage to a mill. The castle depends upon those estates. Grain, livestock, timber, labour, and money flow inward from surrounding communities. Household management therefore reaches far beyond the walls. The lady dictates a reply. She instructs the estate officer to delay one payment from a village badly affected by snow. The steward looks surprised, though he writes without protest. Mercy can be practical. A ruined tenant cannot plant effectively in spring. Relief may preserve future income, loyalty and stability. It may also reflect genuine compassion. Motives rarely arrive alone. A strange little item sits beside the letters, a small lump of wax, bearing the impression of a household key. It was made to test whether someone had opened a chest without permission. Seals can reveal tampering, a thread, wax mark, or carefully positioned knot may protect stores more cheaply than an additional guard. Such methods rely upon fear of discovery as much as physical security. The lady inspects the mark. It remains intact. Somewhere in the corridor, a bell sounds once. The household has moved deeper into night. The lady closes the final tablet and replaces her glove. Her work is not finished. But the most urgent decisions have been made. Blankets will move to the nursery. Honey will reach the infirmary. Fuel will be rationed. Damaged cloth will become something useful. You watch the keys return to her belt. Their weight is small compared with the responsibilities they represent. The castle survives through visible strength, but also through counting, mending, judging, and remembering. Much of that labour passes through women's hands before anyone else notices a problem. The lady leaves the chamber with the steward. You follow them into the corridor, where servants carry selected garments toward the sleeping rooms. Wool, linen, fur, and leather brush against one another as they pass beyond the shutters. The wind rises again. Within the walls, every person prepares another layer against it. You follow the servants carrying garments toward a long chamber beside the sleeping rooms. The air smells of wool, leather, smoke, and faint traces of lavender stored among folded cloth. Several chests stand open beneath the lanterns. Inside them lie tunics, hoods, stockings, cloaks, gloves, belts, and fur-lined garments arranged according to rank. Nothing appears light enough for mild weather. Tonight, every useful layer has been brought forward. A servant lifts a heavy wool gown. The fabric falls in thick folds and brushes the floor with a soft rasp. Its outer surface feels coarse beneath your fingertips, though the inside has been lined with smoother cloth. Wool is the great defender against medieval cold. It traps air, retains warmth when slightly damp, and can be woven in many weights. Sheep support clothing economies across Europe, linking fields, workshops, markets, ports, and noble wardrobes. Even modest households depend upon wool. Quality varies dramatically. Fine cloth can feel soft and dense, while cheaper material may scratch the skin and where unvindy, dyed fabrics cost more, especially when strong or fashionable colours require imported substances and skilled work. The servant holds the gown toward the lantern. Its deep green has faded around the sleeves. No one minds tonight. You begin with the innermost layer. A linen shirt or shift sits against the skin, protecting heavier garments from sweat and body oils. Linen feels smooth but cold when first worn, especially after storage in an unheated chest. A maid warms one shirt near the hearth. She turns it carefully, keeping the fabric away from her room sparks when she hands it to a young page. He presses it against his face with visible gratitude. Such pleasure requires very little. Over the linen comes a woolen tunic, fitted more closely around the torso than the outer gown. Stockings or hose cover the legs, secured to a belt or garment above. Additional layers may include padded clothing, sleeveless coats, or lined robes. The exact combination depends upon status, region, occupation, and fashion. A guard needs movement, a noble guest may accept heavier folds for display, a stable worker needs garments that resist dirt and allow bending. A laundress wants sleeves that can be rolled back without unravelling half her clothing. Practicality negotiates constantly with appearance. You watch a tailor examine a split seam along a man's sleeve. He pulls the edges together, threads a needle, and begins repairing the tear under weak light. The needle is small and valuable. Metal tools require skilled production and careful storage. Losing one in straw bedding creates inconvenience for the tailor and a memorable surprise for the next sleeper. The man waits beside the workbench. He wears a sleeveless outer garment while the repair continues. His arms remain folded tightly against his chest, making patience look unusually heroic. Layering provides better protection than one enormous garment. Air trapped between fabrics slows heat loss, while removable pieces allow the wearer to adjust around fires, kitchens, stables, and exposed walls. Medieval people understand this through experience. They may not describe insulation through modern physics, but they know that two thinner woolen layers can outperform one loose covering. They know wind enters at necks, cuffs, ankles, and hems. Those openings receive attention. A woman ties a hood closely beneath her chin. Its long shoulder cape covers the upper back, where cold drafts often settle. Some hoods include extended fabric that can be wrapped around the head or neck. Caps remain useful indoors. People cover their heads not simply for modesty or fashion, but because comfort improves sharply when ears and scalp are protected. A bare head in a winter passage is an educational mistake rarely repeated. You try on a wool hood. The cloth muffle sounds slightly and holds the smell of smoke from earlier fires. Its edge brushes your cheek. The world feels smaller, quieter, and immediately warmer. Nearby, fur linings are being inspected. Rabbit, squirrel, lamb, fox, and other pelts may appear in garments, depending upon wealth and local supply. Fur worn inside traps warmth while protecting the more delicate surface from weather. The finest furs advertise status, ermine. And costly imported pelts belong to elite display, though availability changes by region and period. Less prestigious skins remain perfectly effective and far more common. A servant shakes out a rabbit-lined cloak. Tiny hairs rise in the lantern glow. One panel has been replaced with a different shade, creating an uneven pattern hidden beneath the outer wool. Warmth does not demand symmetry. A curious clothing solution involves placing loose fur or sheepskin inside footwear during intense cold. Some people use felted wool, straw, or cloth scraps instead, replacing them whenever moisture destroys their insulating value. Dryness matters as much as thickness. Wet shoes draw heat from the feet and soften leather. Snow entering around the ankle can turn a short journey across the ward into hours of discomfort. You look down at the footwear arranged near the bench. Most shoes are made from leather, shaped closely around the foot, and turned during construction so seams remain protected. Soles are thin by modern standards. Such shoes offer flexibility. They also provide a very personal relationship with every frozen stone. Some workers add patterns, raised wooden overshoes strapped beneath regular footwear. These lift the feet above mud, rough views, and shallow snow. Patterns can help outdoors. They also produce a clacking sound and require careful balance. Walking quickly on icy stone while wearing them offers a lesson in humility. A maid demonstrates. She takes 3 measured steps, catches one edge against the floor, and recovers with remarkable dignity. The other servants pretend not to notice. No one wishes to be next. The written evidence gives no complete picture of how widely specialized winter footwear reached poorer castle workers. Household accounts list purchases and repairs, but reused shoes, personal possessions, gifts, and improvised padding often escape notice. Many workers likely managed with whatever they owned. One person's feet may rest inside lined boots, and others may rely upon patched leather and fresh straw. Both stand within the same castle, separated by several degrees of warmth and a large amount of rank. Gloves present similar differences. Fine gloves can be fitted, lined, and carefully stitched. Labourers may wear rougher mittens or wrap hands in cloth when dexterity is less important. A guard handling weapons needs fingers available. A servant carrying wood values thickness. A scribe requires movement precise enough to control pen and ink, even when his hands ache. You pass a desk where one clerk warms his fingers around a cup. His gloves lie beside him with the fingertips cut away. The design looks awkward, yet it allows him to write without exposing the entire hand. The ink has thickened in the cold. He adds a little warmth by placing the container near the lamp, then remembers the risk and moves it back. Fire, wax, parchment, and wool create a workplace that rewards caution. Belts also play a larger role than decoration. They secure garments, support pouches, carry knives, suspend keys, and help close layers against the body. A loose outer robe may feel warmer when belted tightly, because wind has fewer openings to explore. Brooches and pins fasten cloaks. A valuable clasp displays wealth, while a simple bone or metal pin performs the same task without attracting admiration. A small collection of pins rests in a wooden dish. One has bent almost double. The seamstress straightens it slowly against the table, judging whether the metal will survive another use. Objects live long lives here. Garments are altered when fashion changes or bodies grow. Adult clothing becomes children's clothing. Worn sleeves become patches. Damaged blankets become linings. Ragged cloth becomes wrapping, cleaning material or stuffing. A noble robe may end as a stable pad. Time reduces status very efficiently. Colour remains important despite constant reuse. Dyes signal wealth. Occupation. Household identity and personal taste. Bright reds can require costly materials. Deep blues may depend upon woad or imported indigo. Greens can fade. Black may demand repeated dyeing to achieve richness rather than a dull brown. The castle's winter clothing therefore creates a muted landscape. Smoke, wear, weak light, and years of use soften every shade. Browns, greys, faded reds, and dark blues move through the passages like pieces of the night. You hear wind strike the shutters. Everyone in the room pauses briefly. Then another layer is added. A servant fastens a cloak over the shoulders of an elderly woman. The cloak's weight pulls downward, but she relaxes as soon as the hood rises around her face. Touch becomes the clearest measure of winter. Wool scratches, linen cools, fur softens, leather stiffens, metal clasps bite the fingers before warming against the body. Clothing shapes how people move as well as how they feel. Heavy layers shorten steps, limit arm movement, and make narrow stairs more difficult. Long hems gather dirt and snow. Fashion accepts inconvenience with admirable persistence. The tailor finishes repairing the sleeve. The waiting man pulls it on and bends his arm several times. The stitches hold. He thanks the tailor, then immediately draws his cloak over the repair, hiding the work completely. The tailor appears unsurprised. You continue toward the corridor wearing the borrowed hood. The sound of the castle reaches you through layers of cloth. Firewood knocks against a wall. A distant door closes. Someone laughs softly near the hall. Ahead, warmth flickers from a room where several people have gathered around fading embers. Their cloaks remain fastened, but their hands are occupied with cups, dice, instruments, and stories. Clothing has protected the body. Now the household must occupy the mind through the long winter darkness. You move towards the voices, carrying the smell of wool and smoke into the quiet circle beside the fire. You enter the chamber where several people have gathered around a low fire. The room lies just beyond the great hall, small enough to hold warmth and private enough to encourage easy conversation. A pair of candles burns near the wall. Their flames shine upon wooden cups, folded cloaks, bone dice, and the polished curve of a small harp. Smoke hangs lightly beneath the ceiling, mixed with the scent of ale, hot iron, and wool drying beside the hearth. No one removes many layers. The fire has settled into red embers, with only one split log burning at the centre. Its light moves slowly across tired faces. Everyone sits as close as rank and courtesy allow. You find a place near the outer edge. A bench presses hard beneath you, and cold still rises through the floor. Yet the circle offers a kind of warmth that cannot be measured through flames alone. People have come here to pass the darkness. Winter evenings inside a medieval household can stretch for many hours. Work continues for servants, guards, and cooks, but others seek music, conversation, prayer, games, and storytelling. Artificial light remains expensive. Beeswax candles burn cleanly but cost more than tallow. Rushlights offer a cheaper alternative, made by soaking peeled rushes in fat. Though their flames are weak and short-lived, every bright hour consumes something. The household therefore gathers rather than scattering through many rooms. One fire, one lamp, and one story can serve several listeners at once. A musician adjusts the strings of his harp. He plucks a note, listens, then tightens one string with careful fingers. The cold affects wood, gut strings, and tuning, making instruments temperamental. The harp answers with a soft complaint. A woman near the hearth smiles and asks whether it intends to perform before spring. The musician replies that the instrument has adopted the habits of nobility and refuses to work while cold. The Lord Steward pretends not to hear. Music belongs to both formal display and ordinary recreation. Professional minstrels may serve wealthy patrons, travel between households, or perform during feasts. Household members also sing, play instruments, and learn familiar melodies. Tonight's music is modest. The harp begins a slow tune with no grand announcement. Notes rise through the room and settle among the rafters. Conversation fades until only the fire and strings remain. You listen to the spaces between sounds. A log shifts. A cup touches wood. Snow brushes the shutter. The melody tells no clear story, yet everyone seems to recognize its shape. One old listener closes his eyes. A young page mouths the tune silently, perhaps hoping nobody notices. Many medieval songs survive only partially. Written notation preserves some sacred and courtly music, but countless household melodies pass through memory alone. They change with each singer, each region, and each winter evening. The room remembers what parchment does not. When the harp stops, a servant brings a jug of warmed ale. Spices have been added sparingly, perhaps cinnamon, ginger, or cloves. The drink tastes sweet, bitter, and smoky. Warm ale reaches your hands before your tongue. You wrap both palms around the cup and feel your fingers loosen. Steam touches your face. For a moment, nothing beyond the room seems urgent. A man beside you shakes 3 dice inside a wooden cup. The sound draws immediate attention. Dice games are common across social levels, despite frequent criticism from moralists. Gambling can lead to debt, quarrels, neglected duties, and language considered unsuitable for chapel walls. That makes it remarkably popular. The players agree to use hazelnuts instead of coins. One servant protests that even nuts have value during winter, but he joins anyway. The first roll lands badly. A page collects the winnings with suspicious speed. Someone accuses him of practicing. He says practice is merely preparation guided by wisdom. Nobody accepts this explanation. Gaming pieces can be made from bone, wood, stone, or precious materials. Chess, tables, mirrors, dice, and other games appear in elite and ordinary settings. Rules often vary. Near the stable, grooms open the upper vents before unbarring the main door. Warm animal air escapes in a thick cloud, carrying hay, leather, and dung into the morning. The horses stir immediately. One nickers for food, another strikes its stallboard with a hoof. The animals understand routine more accurately than most clocks. Grooms begin with inspection. They check legs, hooves, blankets, water, and bedding. Damp straw is removed before fresh material is spread. Manure is forked into barrows and pushed toward the waste yard. The work is heavy but urgent. Clean bedding protects hooves and reduces moisture. Fresh air matters. though the doors cannot remain fully open for long. A pack horse receives hay first because it must travel later. A riding horse receives grain according to expected work. Older animals may be given softer feed or extra attention. Stable management depends upon observation. No surviving manual can describe every choice made before sunrise. The groom knows which horse eats slowly, which dislikes sudden movement, and which will kick if approached from the wrong side. This knowledge lives in hands and memory. Across the yard, a poultry keeper enters the covered coop. The geese respond with immediate outrage. Their noise spreads through the castle. One rooster, previously uncertain, now commits himself fully to mourning. He announces dawn with such confidence that the sun might feel pressured to appear. The keeper scatters feed. Hens descend from their roosts, feathers puffed against the cold. Eggs are checked carefully, though few are expected during the short winter days. A goose snaps at the keeper's boot. He responds by reminding it that feast days exist. The goose seems unimpressed. Servants begin clearing paths through the inner ward. Wooden shovels push snow toward the walls, while ash and grit are scattered where people must walk. Salt is too valuable for casual use on paving. Sand, cinders, straw, and crushed material provide cheap attraction. Even then, every corner remains dangerous. At the chapel door, a clerk sweeps the steps. He pauses to rub warmth into his fingers, then continues. Morning prayer will begin before the household's principal meal, and the chapel must be ready. Candles are trimmed. The altar cloth is checked. A small amount of incense is prepared. The brazier receives enough charcoal to soften the room without exhausting supplies. Warmth remains symbolic and practical. In the great hall, sleepers are gently disturbed. A servant touches shoulders and calls names in a low voice. Some men rise quickly, folding blankets and gathering boots. Others negotiate with mourning. One retainer claims he has only just closed his eyes. The servant replies that dawn has shown no personal sympathy. Benches are moved, pallets are rolled away, rushes are swept, and the hearth is uncovered. New kindling catches from coals carried out of the kitchen. Smoke rises through the hall. The first flames brighten faces still marked by sleep. Men hold hands toward the warmth before beginning assigned duties. The castle's transformation is gradual. A sleeping chamber becomes a dining space again. A corridor becomes a route for buckets. A dark yard becomes a workplace. Every room changes through labour. Upstairs, maids enter private chambers with warm water and fresh cloths. They move carefully around beds where curtains remain closed. Some sleepers wake to the smell of smoke. Others hear the scrape of shutters being opened slightly to emit grey light. Cold air enters at once, reminding everyone that morning brightness has a price. One servant removes a warming stone from beneath a blanket. It is completely cold. She replaces it with a wrapped stone heated near the chamber hearth. The exchange is performed quietly enough that the guest may never know. Comfort appears effortless only to those receiving it. In the nursery, the nurse wakes before the children. She checks the feverish child's forehead and notices less heat than during the night. Relief softens her face. She sees nothing yet. Hope is handled carefully. The household resembles a small village contained within walls. Its population may expand during feasts, political gatherings, military danger, or visits from important travellers. At quieter times, fewer people remain. Winter changes the balance. The people around you continue their work, but you no longer need to follow every step. They know the path through these rooms. They know where fire sleeps beneath ash. They know which door admits the wind and which child wakes before dawn. Their hands remember the tasks even when their minds are tired. You can leave those tasks with them. The hall grows warmer. Bread waits near the oven. Wool dries beside the hearth. The child's fever eases beneath careful attention. Outside, snow rests across the fields without urgency. The castle no longer seems severe. Its walls soften beneath morning light, becoming pale, quiet shapes against the sky. You imagine walking back through the ward. though each step feels lighter than before. The stable doors close gently behind you. The kitchen sounds become distant. The gatehouse waits ahead, calm and secure. No one calls after you, there is nothing left to carry. You cross the timber bridge beneath a sky turning pearl grey. Snow accepts your footsteps with a soft, steady hush. The road bends away from the walls. Behind you, smoke rises in narrow ribbons, then disappears into the morning. The people inside continue living. They mend, cook, count, pray, guard, teach, and rest whenever rest becomes possible. Their night belongs to the past now. You may let it fade. The cold air no longer stinks. It rests lightly against your face, clean and quiet. Your hands feel warm beneath the folds of your cloak. The fields stretch peacefully ahead. Each hedgerow becomes softer. Each tree loses its sharp outline. Even the castle towers begin dissolving into pale distance. Your steps slow. Then they become almost weightless. The road grows smooth beneath you, covered in untouched snow. No wind disturbs it, no bell sounds, no door opens. Only the faintest morning light remains, spreading gently across the white ground. You breathe in slowly, then breathe out. The castle is safe behind you, the fires are burning. The children are sleeping a little longer. Nothing needs your attention now. The night has passed. The walls grow distant. The snow becomes quiet, and you may rest. Sleep well.